guys, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be filming my Essie nail polish collection video. So I spent quite a big chunk of yesterday swatching every single Essie nail polish that I own. There's my phone going off. But I think that I got them all eventually. I think I found exactly 20 in the end, and I am just going to be doing colours. I'm not going to be focusing on like top coats, base coats, treatments and that kind of thing, just because I can see that this video is already going to be pretty long and I didn't really have a massive amount to say either. So I think I'm just going to go through them in a really random order, and the first one that I'm going to talk about is this. This is Hip-Anema. Essie described this as a poppy bright red orange, which I think is a pretty good explanation of it. It's very similar to Rimmel's Hip Hop from their Salon Pro collection. If you like those kind of warm toned, quite bright, orangey, poppy reds. This is the only shade that I've got that's got the sticker on the side saying professional application. I'm not entirely sure why it says that. I can't remember where I got it from, whether maybe this is one that I got online or in TK Maxx or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But honestly, it's very similar in application, formula, longevity, and pretty much everything to any other Essie nail polish that I own. Next, I have one that is really fitting for the season. This is Bobbing For Baubles, and Essie described this one as a deepest, darkest sapphire, and I would definitely agree with that as well. It's a very rich kind of blue. It's a very dark, deep blue, but it doesn't kind of give the illusion of being black, as I find that a lot of darker shades do. This is one that goes pretty much fully opaque in one coat as well, so if you are just looking for something that's really, really quick and easy to apply, it lasts a really long time too, and yeah, it's probably one of my favourites in the entire collection. Next, I have Lilacism, and this is probably one of my first ever Essie nail polish purchases. It's this really gorgeous lilac shade. That's really all there is to say about it. Essie described it as a satiny smooth lilac, which I would definitely agree with. It's very creamy, it sits really nicely on the nails, it's fully opaque in two coats, which I find quite difficult for these kind of pastel sort of colours. A lot of them tend to be a little bit sheerer and I really need to build up to 3 coats. When I first started blogging and YouTubing, this colour and a couple of other shades I think that I'm going to mention as well, ones that kind of everyone was talking about. I then have another blue. This is Pret-A-Surfer, and this is probably the truest blue that I would wear. I don't normally go for bluey, greeny nail polishes anymore. I tend to stick to nudes and reds. This is just such a pretty colour. It's really unlike anything else I own. Essie described this as an immersive marine blue, and that's probably the best way that I can think to describe it as well. It's just a classic mid-tone, very simple, very basic blue, but it looks incredibly pretty on the nails. So from the same collection as Pret-A-Surfer, I think these were all from their 2015 summer collection. This is Peachside Babe, and Essie described this as a sunripe peach. It's definitely more coral than a peach. It's slightly brighter, slightly more orangey. This is quite bright, but it's still really, really pretty. It's one of the ones that I wore religiously throughout the summer, especially if you've got a little bit of a tan. It really complements that as well. Next up is another kind of summery shade. This one is Turquoise Caicos, and Essie described this as a flirty and pretty tropical aqua. This is absolutely gorgeous. Again, in the summer when you've got a little bit of a tan, it complements it really well, and it's just one of those shades that's really easy to wear. Even though I don't tend to wear blues very often, this is just one of those colours that I just think is fail-safe. It goes with absolutely everything. Next up, I've got Urban Jungle. Now this is described by Essie as an irresistible alabaster orchid. I'm not entirely sure what that exactly means. It's a very pretty off-white nude colour. Very bright, it's very light, but it's a little bit more subtle than a kind of classic complete white nail. I don't tend to like that look at all. I know that might be a little bit of a controversial opinion, but I find something like this is a lot easier to wear, especially if you do have super pale skin as I do. It's really flattering. I do find that this is one where I need to build up 3 coats to make it opaque. I'm not entirely sure why, because the formula itself is quite creamy, but it just tends to look a little bit sheer and gets a little bit patchy as well in certain places. So I do build it up to 3 coats, but I find that it's one of the shades that is well worth taking the extra time with, because it's just absolutely beautiful. Going back to one of the darker, more winter appropriate shades in my collection, this is Luxedo, and Essie described this as a deepest plum, which again I would definitely agree with. My one gripe with it is that it is so dark that in some lights it does appear to be almost black, and I'm not really a big fan of black nails. I like to be able to see like a little bit of the colour coming through. If you are into your really, really deep, dark, plummy shades, this is really pretty. It's really vampy, and It's one again that I've had for a really long time, but it lasts particularly well on the nails, and especially on the toes. I think this is a really nice one. One of the prettiest reds in my collection is this one. This is Fishnet Stockings, and it's slightly darker than the sort of true red, but not quite a burgundy. It sits in between, and it's just really flattering. Again, like I say, if you've got super pale skin as I do, then it's something that works really well alongside that. Essie described this as a spicy dark cream red, and that's definitely how I would describe it. Perfect for Christmas as well, that one. I think that would go really nicely with like a party dress or a little black dress or something. It's very festive and it's very autumnal and wintry. Another nude in my collection is Perennial Chic, and this one is described as a sumptuous tawny tulip. This is probably one of the prettiest nudes in my collection. It's my go-to if I want just that kind of classic sophisticated nude, but it's still very opaque. I've got a couple of other Essie nude polishes I haven't mentioned yet that are slightly sheerer, and that kind of, you can really build them up to make them opaque, but this one just goes opaque. 2 coats and you're done. Another one that I can remember the entire blogging community going crazy about when I first started blogging is Bikini So Teeny. It is the classic blue. Essie described it as a sparkling cornflower blue. It's definitely got a little bit of shimmer to it, a little bit of a sheen to it if you look particularly closely, but it's just really flattering on the nails. I never thought that I would like a sort of shimmery blue. But it's one of those ones that you can get away with because the shimmer is so sort of undetectable. It's not one that I wear very often anymore, I have to admit, but when I first got it I was completely in love with it, and I think it probably goes down in history as one of Essie's most cult, kind of most well recognised shades, I would say. Next up I have Chinchilly. So this is described by Essie as a sleek granite grey, and I would agree with that again. It looks a little bit more brown in the bottle than I'd say it does translate to on the nails. Like I say, in the bottle it looks very mushroomy. On the nails it does translate to a pretty sturdy grey. I would personally go for something like Lilacism DWS. I think that's probably my favourite grey of all time. That's more of a blue toned grey. This is more of a brown tawny toned grey. But next up I have Sunset Sneaks. This is described by Essie as a bright cushiony crimson. I would say that this is very similar to Hip-Anema, which I think was the first polish that I talked about. On the nails it's really quite an undetectable difference. There really isn't a lot of difference. It's a very bright poppy, orange toned, sort of pretty summery red, and you can't go wrong with it. Bus has just stopped right outside the window. Next up I have one of my most worn shades of the whole collection. This is not just a pretty face, and it's one of those sheerer nudes that you can build up, I would say, kind of 3 or 4 coats and you get a fully opaque finish, but if you don't want that, then just like 1 or 2 coats. Just gives your nails a really nice coat of colour. It makes your nails look really healthy but still incredibly natural. It's a very sophisticated kind of look to go for, I would say. It's very barely there. It's one of those ones that it's probably always a good idea to have something similar of in your collection. It's always going to come in handy, and I would say for like bridal wear and things like that as well, it's a really nice one to go for. So that one is described by Essie as a naturally pinkish nude as well. I feel like I didn't mention that, although maybe I did. I don't think I did. Next I have Blossom Dandy. This is described by Essie as a mint cream hydrangea. This is a really, really pretty shade. It's probably, again, one of my favourites. It's very much like Turquoise and Caicos, but it's perhaps got a slightly sort of brighter bluey tinge to it. It's like a very bright version of a mint green. It's one of those ones that in spring, summer, it always just comes out. The formula of this one is very thick, it's very creamy. It definitely goes opaque a lot quicker than Turquoise and Caicos. I find Turquoise and Caicos is probably the more preferable colour. They are just very, very slightly different. But this one I can get a fully opaque finish in just 1 or 2 coats. Turquoise and Caicos, I tend to find that actually 3 or 4 coats. I needed to get a fully opaque finish. That one is very kind of thin and very sheer, but obviously it depends how you apply your nail polish, and Turquoise and Caicos will probably last a little bit longer for that reason. From the same collection I have Petal Pushers. This is described by Essie as a smoky stone rose, and this is just such a gorgeous colour. Again, it's very grey on the nail. Even though it is a grey, I feel as though it's got a slightly sort of purpley, bluey tinge to it. It is very pretty. It's not one, again, that I wear on a very regular basis, but it's a nice one to have in the collection, and it lasts a really long time as well. I will say that about it. I've had it on before for well over a week and it hasn't chipped at all. Again, from the same collection, I think that this is the last one from that spring collection, is Flowerista, and this is a Passionate Plum Dahlia. This is without doubt one of my favourite shades of them all. I just think it's such a pretty colour. I got this when I was looking for Tom Ford's African Orchid, I think that's what it's called. This one is quite similar. I don't think that you can ever kind of reach that Tom Ford level, but it is a very similar shade, so if you are looking for something that's a little bit cheaper, a little bit more purse friendly, then this is a great one to go for. Back down to another one of the darker shades in my collection. This one is Stylenomics, and this again is one of probably the first ones that I ever bought. It's a very deep, rich green. So this is described by Essie as a wealthy, rich and opulent dark green, and that is definitely probably the best way to describe it. It feels very luxurious, it's got a very kind of sophisticated, grown-up feel to it. It's incredibly beautiful. Again, it's one of those ones that is so dark that occasionally it could pass as black in certain lights, which does let it down slightly, but I think if you're in the right light and you've got that kind of green coming through, then it is without doubt one of the prettiest nail polishes that I own. It's got that kind of Christmassy, festive feel to it, maybe because it's slightly like a Christmas tree, I don't know. Second from last is Chillato. This is one that came out this summer, and it is described by Essie as a frozen cream pistachio one. It's a very kind of pastel, sweet, ice creamy colour, but it is completely unlike anything else in my collection. I went through a pastel stage a couple of years ago now, so I do have quite a lot of pastels from different brands. This is something that I haven't seen anywhere else. I wasn't that keen on it when I first got it. I wasn't really sure what I thought of it, but I had seen it on other people, on Instagram and things like that, and that had definitely sold it to me. And it is incredibly beautiful. It doesn't do it justice, I don't think, when it's in the bottle. It's one of those ones that you probably had to actually apply to be able to see how beautiful it is. So I've left the festive Christmassy glitter until last. This one is called Toggle to the Top, and it's one that I bought I think last year. I meant to wear it all the way through Christmas, and it did chip like no man's business. If you're in the market for something that's going to be really long lasting and kind of stay with you throughout the Christmas, New Year season, this definitely isn't going to be it. It's much more of a party shade. It's one of those ones that you would put on like the evening of a party and then probably take it off the next day, because it really doesn't last on the nails at all, but it is so pretty. Essie described it as a sparkling crushed garnet red. It's a deep burgundy with these sort of brighter red, almost like pinky-ish specks of glitter in it. So I think that pretty much rounds off my entire Essie collection. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and that it's going to be helpful for some of you, and I will see you guys soon. Bye!